Hello, everyone. So, recently, Alberta introduced, or rather, I should say, put forward certain requirements related to Alberta job offer and employments. And one of the sections in this particular requirement talks about a reasonable effort on part of the employer to demonstrate that they have done certain recruitment actions. So many people have reached out to me trying to understand what these could be and what the employer needs to provide as a proof of recruitment efforts. So although the requirements doesn't talk very clearly, the requirements itself doesn't talk very clearly about it, there are some guidelines that we can discuss. So that is what I'm going to discuss in this particular video. If you have any more inputs of it, any more understanding of it, let's get together in the comment section so that everybody of us can understand and learn from our experience. Since this is a new development, the things and the clarifications will take time to come through and it will become clearer over time. So these are the job offer requirements, job offer and employment requirements that I'm talking about, which Alberta has put forward very recently. Again, my view of this particular requirements is that these requirements would have already been in place. These are the parameters which Alberta would have been looking at during its processing, but it has kind of explicitly declared it, and then looks like it has added some very specific requirements relating to number of years of incorporation and the annual revenue and things like that. So those things are quite explicit, I would say even self-explanatory. So you would not have question related to what does 2 complete fiscal year means. Just reading that would give you an idea of what it means. Or something like having a place of business in Alberta, what does it mean? We know what a place of business is. So, but there are certain things which are kind of up in the air in my opinion, and which is this point which has confused quite a few of people. That the employer has made reasonable efforts. Again, it doesn't define what a reasonable effort means, but it says it has made reasonable effort to fill the position with a Canadian citizen or permanent resident. And then that has to be demonstrated through your recruitment activities, or it says recruitment outcomes, which basically means recruitment activities like conducting interviews, giving publishing advertisements and things like that. However, it doesn't say very specifically, but if you see here that it has provided a link to certain guidelines, which is a federal guideline, which will be used as a broad guideline. So even though there is no specific guideline or demonstrate or declaration by Alberta, it has provided a link to the federal recruitment guideline. If you look into this particular link, if you click this link, it will open up a page which will look like this. So here basically there are certain guidelines. I would just, if you go into this page, so this is a page for program requirements for low wage positions. Okay. And one of the sections relates to your recruitment and advertisement. So this page, I will provide a link of this page, and this is available otherwhere also. So here it says that before offering any job to a foreign worker, the employer should make reasonable efforts to see if that position can be filled with a Canadian citizen or somebody who is already a Canadian PR holder. Okay, so then there are certain minimum requirements, and then before applying for a Lmia. So Lmia is in many cases a precursor to the work permit. So for example, if you are applying for an Lmia, you should conduct 3 different activities. You must advertise on Government of Canada's job bank and at least 2 additional methods of requirement, which is consistent with the target occupation. So for example, if you are offering a job, so apart from advertising on Government of Canada's job bank, you should have at least 2 more methods of recruitment which is relevant to the position that you are offering, and it must target a different group. Okay, so that's the basic conditions. But again, if you read here, this is for Lmia. This is not for PNP or Alberta PNP for that matter. But again, this is just a guideline which Alberta might use. So instead of Lmia, Alberta might read it as before applying for a nomination, you must have advertised on Government of Canada's job bank and 2 additional methods of recruitment, right? So that is very important to understand. Then what does method of recruitment mean? So here, as you say here, 2 additional methods of recruitment. What does the method of recruitment means? So the acceptable methods for recruitment includes, again, this word is very, very critical. Any time in any legal document or any kind of guideline, if you see the word include, this basically means the list that you are going to read is not a final list, right? So this list can be more than what is specified here. Understand this as kind of a minimum guideline for you. So if beyond these particular methods, if your company or if your employer follows any relevant effective method, then that is good enough, right? Like for example, employment websites, classified websites, local newspapers, job fairs, local stores. Your company might put a pamphlet on the local store and local worship centers, anything, local magazines or journals. There are multiple things here, right? Like for example, it doesn't include WhatsApp group. So you might have a local WhatsApp group through which you are advertising, or through Twitter, or through a Twitter poll, or through a LinkedIn kind of a platform, right? So those are the things which are not included here. And if your employer has made those kind of efforts, and if he has those proofs, it should be good enough. So just understand this as a guideline towards the acceptable methods of recruitment, acceptable methods of recruitment, correct? Okay. So these are the things in addition to the Canada Job Bank. Okay. Next, recruitment documentation retention. The employer should retain the records for at least 6 years. So at any time there is an inquiry, they might have to produce the evidence, and then they will have to keep the evidence for a minimum of 6 years. So for example, if they have advertised on a job board, download a PDF copy with all the relevant links and everything, and just keep it saved, so that in future, if those links are taken down, or if that or after the position is filled, the advertisements is taken down, it is still available for review. This job advertisement duration. So obviously it's not possible that if they are giving you a nomination, and to demonstrate that they have made reasonable effort, that advertisement should be up for a minimum number of time. So it should have occurred 3 months prior to submission. So say if they are willing to nominate a person for Aaip, that particular advertisement should have been up at least for 3 months before they offered you, and in that 3 months it should be up for a minimum of 4 weeks. It should be minimum of 4 weeks consecutively. So they might want to do like 4 weeks, take a gap, again 4 weeks, or 4 weeks and then 1 week, take a gap, 1 week, things like that. So whatever the duration is, if it is on for the whole duration of 3 months, good enough. But if not, at least for 4 weeks in the prior 3 months period. And at least one of the options, right? One of the options should be active at the time of the issuing of nomination. So here it talks about Lmia. So I'm not too much bent on reading it very thoroughly as a Lmia document, but I'm just reading it as a guideline. So if under this guideline you would see that one of the 3 recruitment activities, you need 3 recruitment activities anyways, like it's mentioned here, and one of those should be ongoing. Like when they are issuing you nomination, at that point of time it should be ongoing, and that recruitment activity should seek Canadians and the permanent residents, so citizens and PRs, right? Proof of advertisement, you should maintain a proof that you have made reasonable effort to recruit Canadians and permanent residents. So just a proof of this has to be included with your application. So this proof of advertisement, this particular section talks about with your application means Lmia application, but for our understanding, we should understand that proof of advertisement should be provided with your nomination package, with the nomination application that you would be doing. Okay, so this is again a broad guideline. This is not a very something laid out in stone. This is just a guideline, and this particular section says that this guideline will be used for applicant who is not already living and working in Alberta. So for somebody who is already working and living in Alberta, they might follow a different but a similar approach of advertising. So this, I would say, is a very safe approach. So if these guidelines are followed for somebody who is already in Alberta, it's very good, right? There is no question asked. But say if the employer is not following these guidelines, and like something less or something more or something different, and for somebody who is already in Alberta, it might be good enough. So we have to take but just make sure that your employer has made those reasonable efforts, and in something in law it's called good faith, right? So if it has really genuinely made these reasonable efforts to recruit a Canadian or a PR for the position, he is not able to fill it, and that's the reason he is kind of nominating a person for a PR or giving a job offer to a foreign worker, right? So that's the basic crux of this section, evidence of reasonable efforts by the employer, that I wanted to discuss. If you read through, if you Google it, and you will find many such similar guidelines available, and to be very honest, these guidelines are already in place for work permits. So if your employer has already applied for certain work permits or Lmia, they might already be aware of these guidelines, and they might already be doing things like this. So this should not come as a very big news to an employer, unless it's a very new employer or like somebody who is doing it for the first time. But then in that case, make sure that they have they do satisfy the period criteria, the revenue criteria, and the headcount criteria. So there is somewhere here a headcount criteria. Yeah. So this is the headcount criteria that they have. Make sure that they are satisfying these also. And the way Alberta has kind of framed this, it's now your responsibility to work with your employer and get all the documents. So you will get all the documents from your employer. Make sure that your employer is satisfying so many conditions, and then only apply. Because if it is for any reason that your application is rejected for employer disqualification, that your fees will not be refunded. So that make sure that you work with employer, right? So this is where it says very clearly. Okay. So yep. So that's it. And any questions, post it on the comments, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching, and all the best.